Hey everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at one of the stakes events at Keeneland on Saturday. Race 8 is the Grade 2 Elkhorn Stakes, going the mile-and-a-half distance on the turf course. A field of 10 runners signed on to contest this marathon trip, and it's a pretty nice field for a Grade 2 event. We've got a couple of Mike Maker trainees in here in the number 5, Red Knight, and the number 2, Value Engineering. Both of those could attract plenty of support in here. Chad Brown has a runner with the number 8, Highest Honors. We've got the venerable 9-year-old Channel Maker who's coming back to try to win this race for the second year in a row. Pretty intriguing affair, including some up-and-coming horses who seem to be improving on the way into this Elkhorn. We'll talk about as many of them as we can. I think I've got 8 horses to talk about on this rundown. But before we get to them, let's talk about the Timeform US pace projector for this race to get a sense of how it might be run through the first half mile of this 12-furlong affair. And you see the number 3, Rising Empire, shown on the early lead, and I agree with that. This horse put the blinkers on at Fairgrounds over the winter and started to show some improved tactical speed, and especially last time out when he led nearly the entire way in the Mervyn Muniz Memorial. So definitely a horse that I expect to be forwardly placed on the stretch out. Not sure we're going to see the number 10 Tis the Bomb that close to the pace. These pace projectors can be tough to get right in marathon races, just given the variability in how fast these turf races are run through the early stages. I would expect the number 1 Channel Maker to be more forwardly placed than he is shown on the pace projector. He's a horse that does not possess a lot of early speed, but these races tend to be run at a slower clip in the early fractions, and I would just imagine he's going to get a hustling ride from the inside post to try to attain his typical forward position from John Velasquez. Let's also take a look at the Timeform US finish projector for this race, as we've been talking about on the stakes previews. This is the visual representation of the Timeform US power picks that you would be familiar with from the classic version of Timeform US, and just shows the relationships between the runners at the wire instead of just giving out 1, 2, 3 picks based on the Timeform US algorithm. It shows if there's a high confidence in the top pick, and in that case, that is the number 2, Value Engineering. And you could see it's a pretty bunched up group near the finish line. So not a race that the pace projector views or the finish projector where it views one horse as having a significant advantage over the others. And that makes sense as you look through this field. A lot of similar speed figures, similar running lines and form. So a competitive affair for us to handicap. And let's start going through some of the major contenders in this Elkhorn. And we'll begin with one of those Mike Maker trainees, the number 5, Red Knight. Let's take a look at his last race when he won the William L. McKnight Stakes at Gulfstream Park towards the end of January. And that is him in the yellow silks moving down the center of the course, about to take over from his stablemate Value Engineering, who we're going to talk more about in just a little bit. And this was a nice victory from Red Knight. I thought he got a very good trip and ride from Irad Ortiz, who basically just followed Value Engineering's move into the race around the far turn, and then was able to tip outside of that, though, at the top of the stretch to take over in the late stages. This is a horse that is another 9-year-old in the race who has been in good form for many seasons. He's competed in these stakes races at Keeneland in the past, and just seems like he keeps coming back, finding another breath of fresh air, another new life for him as he continues to age for another season. So definitely a horse that is easy to root for coming into this Elkhorn, and we'll see if Mike Maker can have him ready to deliver another top effort off the layoff. He does get a rider switch for this race to Gerardo Corrales, who did ride him towards the end of last season. I thought gave one good ride at Kentucky Downs in the Turf Cup, maybe not as great a ride in the Sycamore at Keeneland after that. So we'll see what kind of trip Red Knight can work out in this Elkhorn. The other Mike Maker trainee is the number 2, Value Engineering. Let's take a look at his race in the Mac Diarmida last time. This was the race that he ran in right after he finished second to Red Knight in the McKnight in his prior start. And I think he validated that the improved form that he displayed, finishing second in that McKnight, was no fluke, because he made that early move to take over at the top of the stretch, is able to battle back inside of a foe, coming to the finish line here and get the victory in this grade 2 event. Now coming back in another grade 2, going the mile-and-a-half distance. And the added ground has proven to be really key for Value Engineering, who has taken his game to a new level since being purchased at auction by Mike Maker and company at the end of last year, and just feels like Value Engineering is primed for another good performance here. I thought he arguably ran just as well, if not better, than his stablemate Red Knight 2 back, and feels like a horse that just makes his own good trips. So he's definitely one that I want to take seriously in this Elkhorn. The number one Channel Maker last visited the winner's circle in July of last season in the Grand Couturier Stakes. Let's take a look at that effort. And I want to talk about this race because he also was running against another horse that he'll face here, Highest Honors, that flashy gray who's in between horses. But that's Channel Maker battling back down towards the inside on the rail. And I think this is Channel Maker at his best, showing off his greatest attribute, and that's just his fight and will to win. He often makes hard work of his races, but if he's in the mix at the very end, you know that he's going to try his hardest to get his nose on the wire first. He showed that attribute last season when he won the Elkhorn Stakes coming off the layoff at Keeneland in 2022. Arguably, he didn't really improve on that form at any point last year, and his season ended with a seventh place finish in the Breeders' Cup Turf. He does have a prep for the race this year. He came off the layoff and raced in the McKnight at Gulfstream over the winter. Did again finish seventh behind today's rivals Red Knight and Value Engineering. But note the red color-coded Timeform US pace figures for that race, and he was right on top of that pace that did fall apart due to that red color coding, the fast pace situation. So definitely against the flow that day. So he might be capable of better if the pace is more moderate this time, though I don't love the rail draw for him because he's a horse that sometimes needs to be ridden coming out of the starting gate. He's not the quickest away from the blocks these days, so we'll see if he can get into his typical forward position breaking from the rail. The other horse that we saw in that Grand Couturier replay is the number 8 Highest Honors, and he's run a bunch of times since then. He completed his 2022 season with some minor placings in stakes races like the Sycamore at Keeneland and the Red Smith. He came off the layoff last time at Gulfstream running in the Mac Diarmida behind Value Engineering, and personally, I didn't think he had a big excuse to be fourth that day as the 5-2 favorite. Irad Ortiz tried to give him a pretty good ride, got some pace to close into, and he was just kind of one-paced at the end, couldn't really pick up ground. And I think that's kind of the comment that you make about all of this horse's races. He's just fairly one-paced. He doesn't have a big turn of foot that's going to be able to help him extricate himself from trouble or run past horses in the stretch. He just kind of stays on and will try to plod through the wire. So while that does help him get the mile-and-a-half distance and perhaps got a minor third place or fourth place award in this race, I don't know if it's going to really point him out as a win candidate. And he's a horse that does tend to take a lot of money going out for the powerful barn of Chad Brown, with Irad Ortiz being his regular rider. So I wanted to view Highest Honors with a little bit of skepticism in this Elkhorn. Horse coming from a different direction is the number 3 Rising Empire, and I think this is a pretty intriguing horse in this race. I talked about him with regard to the pace projector already. He was the one that's shown on the early lead, and I would expect him to get an aggressive ride once again from Florent Geroux, because those tactics nearly paid off last time when he went off at 9-1 in the Muniz Memorial at Fairgrounds, led all the way until the final jumps when he got passed by the classy Spooky Channel, but he did not give that race up to Spooky Channel. He was trying to battle back in the final strides when that foe passed him in the last 16th of a mile. So a really good effort from Rising Empire. That 127 Timeform US speed figure, one of the best numbers that anybody in this field has ever earned. And the big question for him is the stretch out in distance to the 12 furlongs. But based on the way he runs, and especially based on pedigree, I don't think he's going to have any problem with it. He's by Belmont Stakes winner Empire Maker, who can get horses to run as far as they write races. And on the dam side, Smart Farming the Dam, she produced another runner that was pretty adept at marathon distances. That horse Rocketry could go long on the turf, was even better going long on the dirt, but loved races at a mile and a half and beyond. So Rising Empire definitely bred to go this far. And when you watch him run, he covers a ton of ground with his stride. He's got this really great extension on him, big loping strides that are often indicative of a horse that will be able to gallop his way to these longer distances. So I think Rising Empire is a very intriguing runner in this Elkhorn for trainer Brendan Walsh. Another horse coming out of the Muniz Memorial last time is the number 4, Another Mystery. And this is a horse that probably wants more ground than he got to work with in that Muniz last time. He finished 4th behind Rising Empire that day, but previous to that, he had been a good second going this mile and a half distance in the John B. Connolly at Sam Houston. Actually finished ahead of Spooky Channel that day, the horse that turned the tables on him next time out over the shorter distance. And Another Mystery, he can be content to settle for minor awards at times. It's been a little bit of a while since he visited the winner's circle last summer against Statebreds at Hawthorne. He was second and third behind Red Knight in a couple of stakes races last year, but he keeps showing up and running good races in these marathon distances. So I think another mystery, definitely one that you might want to consider, especially if he goes off as high as that 15-1 morning line. A horse that I think some people might be allured by in this race is the number 7, House Street. And we'll take a look at his last race at Gulfstream in an optional claiming event. And I say that he has some allure in here because he's very lightly raced. He clearly has upside coming into this stakes debut, and this was a very visually impressive victory as he's going away at the end. This was his first try over a marathon trip, the 3-turn mile and 3/8 at Gulfstream, and you could see he is just really extending his stride beautifully through the wire to pull away and win by 4.5 lengths. So definitely one that seemed to improve with the added ground, and now he's getting even more ground to work with here, an extra furlong. The problems with House Street are he's never faced company like this. You see in the Timeform USPPs, we give race ratings to each of a horse's prior races. His last race got a race rating of 109. You see that in that race conditions oval. And the preliminary race rating for this Elkhorn is a 124. So that just kind of gives a sign of how much of a step up in class this is for House Street. And he's going to have to run a faster speed figure in addition to meeting tougher horses. And furthermore, I found a stat for trainer Jorge Abreu that it definitely gives some cause for pause. Jorge Abreu does a great job with turf horses in a lot of situations, but he has not had success at the highest level with graded stakes horses. 56 horse sample, and he's 0 for 56. 15 have finished in the money, but when you start 56 horses and have as strong of a stable as Jorge Abreu does, it's pretty noticeable when you haven't had any success at the graded stakes level. So definitely a reason to maybe pump the brakes on House Street a little bit. He's 10-1 on the morning line. I do expect him to go off at a shorter price than that with Flavien Prat aboard. One more horse to talk about, that's the number 6, Verstappen. He is a horse who has had more success on synthetic recently than turf. His last 3 starts have come over the Tapeta surface at Turfway, and he's been in good form. He's a 4-year-old who might just be improving at the right time. His last race, a second-place finish to the synth specialist Wolfie's Dynaghost in the Kentucky Cup Classic, was a really nice effort, earned a competitive speed figure, but he does have some things to prove, stretching out to 1.5 miles for the first time. He's never run a speed figure on turf that really makes him competitive with this field. So just some questions about a horse that's going to be a big price, but one who might be in good form right now. So let's throw out my picks for this Elkhorn Stakes, and I'm going to go with that horse that's coming from the Fairgrounds route, the number 3, Rising Empire. I like his early speed, thought he took a big step forward in that Muniz last time against a nice horse in Spooky Channel, and he does strike me as one that really is going to relish the stretch out to the 1.5 mile distance. So I've got Rising Empire on top, but I do respect the Mike Maker duo. The number 2, Value Engineering, I think could be a slightly better price and also is in great form right now. So definitely a competitive edition of the Elkhorn on Saturday at Keeneland. I'm interested in the number 3, Rising Empire. I wish you good luck with your bets. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend, everybody.